What's up guys, I'm just a gamer and I'm back with another video, and this one is going to be a little different. I'm going to be doing a gaming confession where I'm going to give you a little tidbit story of my past that I'm not too proud of when it comes to gaming. And to start it off, let's go all the way back to, wow, I can't even remember can't even remember the year, but back during my PS1 days. In fact, before I even got my first PlayStation, I was at school with friends, and not sure how it came about, but a friend of mine offered to give me his copy of a PlayStation 1 game that I can't remember why, but he just didn't want it anymore. And me, being the naive young boy that I was, just jumped at the chance, even though at the time, I didn't have a PlayStation yet. Up until that point, I had been reading the magazines. I had been wanting a PlayStation for a long time. Seeing all the reviews for Final Fantasy 7 at the time were crazy, and like a bunch of other games. So regardless, I jumped at the chance to just own a PlayStation game, even though I didn't own a PlayStation system at the time. And that game turned out to be Parasite Eve. Now, at the time, I didn't know much about this game. The one thing that immediately drew my eye when I saw it, though, was the fact that Tetsuya Nomura was behind the character designs. And up until that point, Final Fantasy 7 was crazy popular everywhere, and obviously Nomura's name was becoming very popular at the time. And so, yeah, I was immediately captivated by this game. It just captured my heart right away. But like I said, I actually didn't have a PlayStation at the time. So I just remember going over and just opening it up, looking at the faces, the disc, just taking out the manual, and just looking at the game over and over again, even though I couldn't play it. I couldn't play the game because I didn't have a PlayStation at the time. But I couldn't help myself. I couldn't tell you how long, just reading this little tiny manual, hours a day, just spending my time flipping through it over and over again, reading it over and over again, because I couldn't play it. But, as the story goes, I would eventually get my first PlayStation console, my first PS1, and I immediately put in this disc and started playing. And again, just blown away. Instantly absorbed in this game from the very get-go, from the intro cinematic to the opening fight, with Eve and chasing her down in Carnegie Hall. It was breathtaking. But I would eventually find out why my friend gave me this disc, and that is because the game disc, the first disc, was effectively broken. The game was scratched in the back, which is not to say it's gonna be kill the game off bat, because there's been plenty of times where a game has been scratched and it just runs fine. But this scratch was a killer, because this scratch prevented the game from loading past a certain point in the first disc, a pivotal point in the first disc, I believe in the hospital, if I remember correctly. And for the longest time, I could not, beat the game or get past the first disc because of this problem. The game wouldn't load past this point in the game, and this stayed like this for years. And yes, I say years. And then one fateful day, while traveling out of state with my family, we decided to go to rent a video to watch while we were staying with some friends or family at their house. And while at Blockbuster, I came across a copy of Parasite Eve to rent. Needless to say, I was shocked, amazed, and excited. I convinced my parents to rent me the game, and thankfully they did. And the minute we got back to where we were staying, or at the person's house, or hotel, no, it wasn't a hotel, I'm pretty sure we were at somebody's house, a friend or the family, or a family member's house. And I had already set up my PlayStation at the time, and so I jumped in, immediately popped in the disc, popped in my save, and began to, to see if I could get past that point. And lo and behold, when I got to that point, the game finally loaded past that point, and I was able to continue on past the first disc. And oh, how glorious it was. I wasted no time. I immediately just binged the game, played as much as I could, and I think I reached the end of disc 1. And then I believe by that point, when I finally reached the end of disc 1, it was time to, like, we were leaving, we had to return the disc or whatever, return the game. And the little devil on my shoulder kind of took over, because I grabbed the Blockbuster disc, I looked at the back, and it wasn't perfect. It had a couple of scratches there, here and there as well. And I looked at my first disc, which again, despite that one disc that scratch that was pretty bad, it didn't look bad. It was bad, but it didn't look bad. And they were actually pretty similar looking. So I ended up switching them. And this is before, video game, rental stores started, like, marking and labeling their copies of movies and games and stuff like that. So I just swapped this, and I had my copy of Parasite Eve now fully working whenever I wanted it to. And I'm not happy. I still feel a bit guilty about what I did whenever I think about the poor soul who rented the Parasite Eve game from that Blockbuster after me. Because if they were to get to that point in the hospital, they would never be able to get past it because of that scratch. And to this day, again, I feel so bad. But hey, man, I was a kid, and in my mind, a kid had to do what a kid had to do to play and beat this game. And I would eventually go on to beat Parasite Eve. In fact, I even went to, New Game Plus and did the Chrysler Building and got the actual true ending of the game. This Parasite Eve, became one of my favorite games of all time. Again, as you can see, I still own the copy to this day, and it's banged up. You can see it a little bit there. There's a big crack here. There's scratches on the back. The picture looks a little crinkly from, like, maybe it got wet somehow. I don't remember. But yeah, this is easily one of my favorite games of all time. But it is tinged with a little bit of guilt for what I did to whoever rented it to that Blockbuster, and the first disc that I wouldn't say stole, but I swapped out. Or I'll say traded. Let's say traded. But I still have my copy of Parasite Eve. I have honored the game and not gotten rid of it. And not only that, but I fell in love with this game. To this day, it's one of my favorite games of all time, like I've said. And I enjoyed Parasite Eve 1. I have 2 as well. Beat 2. I even got the perfect ending for that one, even though it took me a while because it was, like, so freaking complicated. But I will admit that I do think 2 is not as good as 1, just because 2 is way more action focused, where 1 was a bit more survival horror-y. Well, not survival horror-y, but yeah, I will say that. And it was just more action based, and that's it. There's only 2 games in this series. That's my stance on that. There's only 2 games in this series. There's no game after that. You can argue it if you want to, but you'll never win. Because, to me, there are only 2 games in this series, and there will only ever be 2 games in this series. So, yeah. But yeah, that's my gaming confession. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like or comment down below. I'd appreciate any feedback, any confessions you'd like to share in the comments down below. I'd appreciate that as well, so I don't feel so alone or as bad. To know that I'm not the only one who's done wrong. But regardless, again, thank you for watching. I'm also streaming on Twitch, so please consider following me there at twitch.tv/JustAGamerInc, all together one word, or you can click the link below. But regardless, thank you for watching, and until next time, take care and have a good game.